Okay, welcome everyone to our Habitat Young Professionals Credit Building 101 webinar. Thank you so much to everyone who is attending, who's joining us today for this lunchtime webinar on building credit health, and how that can help you prepare to buy a home. We're so excited and so honored to have you here. Thank you all, everyone, for attending. We'll give a couple minutes for everyone to flow in. And in the meantime, we'd love for you to enter into the chat box on a scale of 0 to 10. How comfortable are you with addressing credit issues or building your credit or monitoring your credit, anything that has to do with credit health? So a 0 would be, I have no idea what my credit score is. I have no idea what contributes to credit or credit factors. And 10 would be, I'm a total financial expert. I know all the answers to all of the questions we'll be talking about today. So go ahead and if you can, pop into the chat bar 0 to 10. On that scale, how comfortable are you with the topic of credit and credit health? We're going to give a couple minutes for everyone to filter in. So if you can test out your chat function by entering in that question on a scale of 0 to 10, how comfortable are you with the topic of credit and credit health? We'd love to get an idea of our audience and who we're talking with today and how we can best answer your questions. We're going to give a few minutes for everyone to come on in. I'm seeing some answers come in. So Chloe, Letitia, Aaron, seeing some 7s and 8s. That's really awesome to hear that you have some experience building your credit and making sure you have healthy credit. Chloe, I see that, 7 instead of 77. We see that. Thank you everyone for coming on in. All right, it's been a couple minutes, so hopefully we had a chance for everyone to filter in. My name is Caitlin Bathke. I'm the Community Engagement Officer at Habitat for Humanity of Greater Sacramento and the staff liaison to our Habitat Young Professionals, or HYPE, H-Y-P group. HYPE is a group of young professionals dedicated to furthering the mission of Habitat through volunteerism, awareness, networking activities, and bringing the community together to better understand what we do at Habitat. Habitat for Humanity, if you're not familiar, is a nonprofit housing organization, and our mission is dedicated to building and repairing homes for those in need in our local community. We serve low-income families, seniors, and veterans who qualify for our program based on income, need, and willingness to partner, and actually put in 500 hours of what we call sweat equity, helping to build their homes alongside volunteers and purchase their home when it's finished upon a 30-year zero interest equivalent affordable mortgage. So we're really about empowering local families, seniors, and veterans to build and repair a safe place to call home so that everyone in our community has a place to call home. Now, like I mentioned, HYPE supports Habitat through fundraising events like this and networking events. And Logan, who's with us today, is our HYPE events and volunteer coordinator. And he'll be moderating our conversation today with all of our panelists on how to build your credit health. I'll be your technical moderator, so if you have any questions for our panelists or have any technical struggles during the event, go ahead and pop those in the chat. I'll be monitoring those to go ahead and pass along to our panelists. And with that, I'll pass it over to Logan. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is Logan Hall. I'm the event and volunteer coordinator with the SAC HYPE group. And just a little bit about myself. I'm an LA native. I graduated from Sacramento State last May with my BA in business marketing. Currently, I'm a digital marketing freelancer looking for full-time employment in the near future, but at the moment, just trying to keep myself active and busy. So just a little bit about this webinar, how it came together. With the help of Edward Tang, the manager with Kathy Banks in the Sacramento area, Chris Saras, financial advisor with New York Life, and Jeff Stipes, owner of Blue Water Credit Repair. What we wanted to accomplish today with this webinar is to really educate young professionals on how to improve their credit, what it takes to break that plateau of having good credit. Good credit is normally 670 through 739, and just really how to break that, what it takes to break that plateau, and again, how to budget your money effectively to repay your credit balance or loans. And we will also be diving into other topics, but let's just get right into it. before we start, I just wanted to ask the audience, what are you most worried about when first buying a home? I'll let um, Caitlin monitor the chat room, but when first buying a home, what are you most worried about? Is it having the money, lack of knowledge about the process of buying a home, or is your credit just not good enough at the moment and you're looking to repair it in the near future? I'll just give a couple seconds for everybody to put the responses in. Um, now, I'm not sure if we got any responses quite yet, but just keep in mind um, what you're looking for in terms of first buying a home. And I wanted to start this conversation off with Edward Tang at Kathy Banks. Edward, could you please just speak on what young professionals should consider when first looking for a loan, or when a young professional is wanting to be approved to open a line of credit? What does it take for a young professional to be approved for a first home buyer loan or a loan in general? And how can a young professional ensure that they are taking the right steps to getting approved by a bank?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I want to first thank the Habitat and the Hype Group for inviting me today to share some of the knowledge about the home buying process. And I know it's very intimidating, for many of us that hasn't gone through the process before, and this is their first time. I know that there's a lot of information online these days, and that's why a lot of young professionals can be can get savvy real quickly by exploring that information online, through Google. There's just endless information on there. But it's also great to be able to talk to professionals one-on-one as well too, to be able to like you asked, the poll question, what do you worry most about when you're planning to buy a home? And that's a question that normally at my bank, when I'm talking to customers, that's what I ask them. That helps me to understand, basically what should we focus on? How can we help you? Since this is the primary the thing that you are concerned about, we want to address that to make you feel more comfortable when you actually get into the process. And a lot of the concerns are credit score. How do I improve my credit score? Debt, how do I pay down my debt, or how do I control my debt? Savings, do I have enough savings? How much do I need to save to be able to budget and be prepared to buy a home? And the entire buying process, home buying process altogether, to getting a loan, finding an agent, all that are real concerns and questions that some of our customers, or almost all of our customers, have. And so today I wanted to basically talk about one key factor that's very important with the home buying process, and that's DTI. And what is DTI? DTI is basically debt to income, and that's a ratio or a percentage of your monthly gross income that goes towards debt repayment. So basically speaking, DTI is a percentage of your gross income that is used basically to pay off, or to pay your debt. And typically lenders prefer a DTI ratio that's no higher than 36 to about 43%. And depending on the mortgage program or mortgage loan that you're trying to sign up for as well too. And how do you calculate that? Basically, the standard way, and I apologize that I don't have any visuals, but you can very easily find that online as well too. But the standard way to calculate your DTI is basically taking your monthly debt, and also you might want to include your future debt, divided by your gross monthly income. So let's say your current and future debt is about $1,720. You divide that by $4,000, which is your gross monthly income. That would take you to about 43%. Okay, but how I want to do it a little easier, where how I calculate it, since you know if you're going to get a loan with a lender, you can ask them what is your maximum debt to income ratio. So if you know what that maximum debt to income ratio is, you can actually calculate it by your monthly gross income. So say your monthly gross income is $4,000. Now your lender is telling you their maximum DTI percentage is 43%. So you just take $4,000 times 43%. That would take you to actually $1,720 as well too. Now you're going to know how to budget, right? You're going to know how to control what expenses need to be paid off to get you to that level to be able to qualify you for a loan or be a good candidate for the loan, right? So some mortgage lenders, based on the different type of programs that you get, will allow you to have a higher DTI, but only when you have certain aspects that are, less, creating a lesser risk for them. So which means like maybe you have a higher credit score, or you have a larger cash deposit, down payment, let's say, or a larger reserve or savings in your account. That would make them feel comfortable in increasing the DTI for you and to qualify you into a loan. So those are some of the and basically, some of the question is, how do you improve your DTI ratio? I would say pay off as much debt as possible before you apply for a mortgage. That means, paying off credit cards, paying off auto loans, student loans, and other lines of credits or personal, personal loans. And basically, the 43% is an average across, it's a standard across the lending platform. But I always recommend our customers to maybe try to keep it at about 36%. It gives you a lot of more options as well too, as far as getting better rates and paying lesser fees, because it's a lesser risk for a lender to have to take.
That's some really great advice, Edward. And we did have a question come in that I think relates to what you're talking about. And it says, do student loans play a factor in your credit, and to what extent? So I'm sure student loans, of course, add to your DTI, like you've been talking about your monthly debt. But can you speak a little bit to how that might affect someone's credit rating as well?
Well, they do look at that as part of, the debt balance that you owe, and you are obligated, depending on the situation you're in as well too. Say maybe you have deferred payments and it's not required for you to pay for it right now because maybe you're starting off, you're in an entry level. But aside from that, they will look at it as a part of your debt, and this is a monthly obligation that you need to pay. So they'll look at that as part of, okay, what is the monthly payment that you're paying? Now that's going to be added onto as part of your debt to income ratio as well too.
Perfect. I think that's so helpful because, of course, as young professionals, many of us do have student loans, and it's really helpful to know how we should take a look at how that will affect our future debt as well, because for a lot of us, it's a 10-year or more commitment.
Right. For the most part, they don't look at your whole your balance in general, but they'll look at what your monthly payment will be, what your monthly payment is. So that's fair, because it's of course it's going to be a lot smaller than your entire balance. So your monthly payment. So you want to keep your monthly debts to be as low as possible to basically help with your DTI percentage.
So going back to a first-time homebuyer loan, does your student loan necessarily affect you being approved for a first-time homebuyer loan?
No.
Is it okay?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that would be a big factor. You shouldn't be concerned about that, because it's very typical for a lot of the students now to have or to carry a student loan. So it's just a matter of how much that monthly payment is. Then you'd have to be basically prepare yourself and not have too much other debts. Just to okay. So basically, that's a brief summary about DTI. And
so what advice what could you give a young professional when looking for a first-time home buyer loan? Is it what should their credit score be in order to be approved for a FHA or first-time home buyer loan?
I've seen, anywhere between, 620 to about 680. It really depends on, your situation. Like I said, if you have good down payment, a good amount of money saved, you have a good cushion and as far as reserves, they will look at all those factors as well too. So there's a lot of factor that comes into play. So there's no really general, or specific rule, but they look at all of those factors and they can make an assessment based on the risk and see, will they be able to take a lower credit score because you have a higher down payment or a bigger cushion in your savings account as far as reserves go. So all of those play in, come into play when they make that determination to underwrite your loan.
And
Got you.
you mentioned down payment, kind of as a rule of thumb out there in the world that one might read is 20% is kind of the goal to aim for, but is that something that you see fluctuate quite a lot? And is there kind of a more typical or realistic percent number that we see there?
For 20%, a lot of the lenders will ask for that. That's a pretty standard for a conventional loan, 20% down. That would help you to avoid having to pay mortgage insurance. So that's an extra cost. Mortgage insurance is just covering the lender, basically in the event that you will default on your loan. So if there are certain loans, like a first-time home buyer loan won't require you to have a 20% down. In fact, it's a very, very beneficial loan type for first-time homeowners or students or young professionals that are coming out and want or interested in buying a home. They are basically, it can be as low as 3% down. So, but you just have to understand if you're doing anything below the 20%, that you're going to have an extra cost of the private mortgage insurance.
Okay, well, I can see that. And I did notice Kathy Banks offers a community home buyer, that you have a community home buyer program with
Yes,
Kathy
we do.
Banks. Could you briefly go over what a young professional would do in order to be approved for a loan like that? I saw that it didn't really require a down payment. Could you briefly explain a little bit about that program?
Yeah. I mean, our community home buyer program, or I think in some lending companies they call it the first time home buyer program. Basically, is a very good program to get into for young professionals and first time home buyers, where the credit score is lower, where you can have a credit score of 620 to be able to qualify for it. The DTI is a little bit more lenient. It could go up to 45%, DTI as well too. 3% down and just 2 months reserve. The reserve is basically the PITI, which is your principal, interest, taxes and insurance. So you have 2 months of the reserve in your savings account or checking account that you can prove that you have in your checking or savings account that you can show. For the community program or first time home buyer program, they do require you to take a first time home buyer course. This is kind of like a credit course, like what we're doing right now, but it's a course that teaches you how to budget, how to protect your credit, similar to what we're talking about now. But you're required to take a course, which is fairly easy to qualify for that loan. So we recommend that if you're thinking about getting into that program, you can look online to search for any places that are offering those kind of financial courses for you to qualify for a first-time home buyer program.
Oh, well, I really didn't know that you needed to complete a first-time home buyer course before being approved for a first-time home buyer loan. That's very important. Was not aware of that. Okay. So before I transition into budgeting for your first home, I want to ask just one more question in
Yeah.
regards to um, breaking that plateau of having this good credit. I know of millennials graduating college, we our credit isn't very poor. May not be fair, but some cases it's just good, and some people might be looking to break that plateau and reach a higher credit score. What advice could you give a young professional so for them to break that plateau? Is it simply just having multiple lines of credit, or simply as paying your credit balance on time?
I think what is important too, as far as trying to increase your credit score. Some of us might want to consider, consolidating debt. And one of the topics that I wanted to cover today was basically the pros and cons about increasing your credit limit, which could help increase your credit score as well too. And one of the benefits of increasing your credit limit is basically having a little bit more spending power or financial flexibility, where you can consolidate some of your debts into one card, where it's easily manageable for you, instead of having multiple lines of credit where you need to make sure that you pay on time. But if you can consolidate, and a lot of people look at once in a while that their lender offers 0% for 12 months, or X amount of months, they take advantage of that to save themselves money as well too, for those balances that you don't pay off right away. To consolidate it all together, one card, easier to pay every month, and saving you from having the hefty interest that you carry on your other balances as well too. And it gives you also the flexibility of being able to make large purchases, and basically reaping the rewards what credit cards offer, maybe the cash back or something like that. One very significant and important aspect of increasing your credit limit that I feel that benefits you towards the home buying process is it lowers your utilization ratio. So basically, what I'm talking about is, say, um, if you had a credit card with a, say, $5,000 credit limit, and you're already spending 2,500 on it, you're at a 50% utilization ratio, right? But if you can qualify to increase that to $10,000, and if you stick to your normal balance of about $2,500 a month using your card, if you increase that to $10,000, now your utilization ratio is 25%. So it lowers your credit utilization ratio, which in turn can help basically improve the score of your credit score. So that's one very important thing that I think people forget about. If they're like, I don't want to increase my credit because that would mean I would spend more. But it's also beneficial that it will decrease your utilization ratio. And I want to say, some of the drawbacks of increasing is, of course, the same. If you're not controlling your expenses, you could potentially put yourself into more debt, which means more risk for the lender or the creditor as well too, because they look at it like, oh, you have a higher line of credit now, you could potentially get into higher debt or more debt. So that's something to be concerned about. So unless you're a very good budgeter, then I would really seriously look at it before I increase my credit limit. The other thing is, basically, if you request to have your credit limit increase, you could also potentially hurt your credit, because when the creditor gets that request, they will do a hard pull on your credit. They want to see what your current credit situation. So they'll pull your credit. If you have enough of those credit pools, it could kind of temporarily hurt your credit, could lower your credit as well too. So you want to be careful of that. And you don't want to do so much of that right before you're, trying to buy a home or something. So that's something that that we want to consider.
We had that exact question in the chat from Brittany. Will it count as an inquiry on your credit if you ask for a credit increase on your account? So that's very helpful to know that it can put a short-term kind of dent on your credit to ask for too many of those increases.
Right, absolutely.
And I think this is a good segue into talking to Chris about budgeting, because it's very important to have the money to pay off your credit card balance. And so, Chris, what are some ways young professionals can protect themselves and their money and to prepare financially for their future? I know that, life insurance is very important and protecting your assets is also very important. But can you speak upon simply that, protecting themselves and protecting their money for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Habitat for Humanity and the Hype Group. And thank you, Edward, for what you did share. I think it's really important to understand how money works. It can work in your favor or it could be a nightmare. So having an understanding of how the game of money works is very important. So I am going to share some content and get into how budgeting for the future plays into the success or the failure of how you do with money and getting things like homes and good credit. But I'm going to give you some bonus content too to help tie it into not only getting started with buying a house, but also the long game. What is it going to take to retire someday, and what are the aspects and money that make an impact on that? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up.
And we see it on our side, Chris, when you're ready to go.
Yeah, great. Perfect. So yeah, I appreciate this. So we're going to talk about tax favored investing, and I'll get into short and long-term investing. So let's go ahead and go through it. Once again, my name is Chris Saris. I am good friends with Jeff Sipes. I've actually known him since the early 2000s when I was in college and working at a health club. But I'm actually originally, you'll see an Iowa address on there. I'm born and raised in California, have roots in Rockland, California, went to the University of, went to UC Davis as well as University of Redlands. And so I have all my roots. I have clients out there. I'm licensed in a dozen states roughly across the nation. But Jeff invited me to help participate in this seminar or this webinar. And so let's walk through it. Here's my family, my wife, Ashley, and our three boys, Cash, Nixon, and Oakley. So let's go ahead and walk through what we're going to accomplish in this today. First, we're going to examine how taxes affect your financial situation. Then we're going to talk about different strategies depending on where taxes go in the future. Are they going to go up? Are they going to go down? And then how does that impact our decision making? And then where do we position our dollars for spreading out risk? The different types of assets. I know there's popular things popping up all the time, such as Bitcoin and all that kind of jazz, but getting to the fundamentals of how we grow our money and how we position it for risk and for tax efficiency. So next, so this is one of several seminars that I help provide. So if there's follow-up information or questions, just let me know that I can provide for you in the future. The first item here we're going to talk about is the concept of compound interest. So compound interest is an incredible thing when it works in your favor. It is a very important thing in this world. So what we're going to do is talk about what that looks like. So if you took $1 and you doubled it each year, after 20 years, not adding any new money to it, if it doubled every year, you got 100% rate of return. By the way, if you find that investment, let me know what it is. But it's going to be worth $1 million. So, and my compliance officer lets me show you this. So it's actually true math. But if you took the same dollar, doubled each year, but added a drag called taxation of 35%, so that could be federal plus state, especially in the state of California. After 20 years, it generates only about $23,000. So nearly all of it is lost to taxation. So compound interest is a very powerful tool, and there's only so many compounding years in your lifetime, and we'll get into the rule of 72 later. But it's a really important thing to consider when investing and where to position your dollar. Next, talking about taxation. You know, taxes are going up, taxes are going down. It's happening constantly. And so some people say, well, I'm taxed at, 24%. Well, let's take a look as an example, a single individual earning $100,000. Is their entire $100,000 being taxed at 24%? Absolutely not. So the first $9,875 is taxed at 10%. Then the next chunk until $40,000 is at 12%. Then we get 40 to 85 and so on and so forth. So it's a scaled up, or what they call a progressive tax. And so not all your dollars are taxed at that 24% if your last dollar is in that bracket. So your effective rate or your weighted average tax rate is going to be less than what your top rate is in most cases. Next is, well, where do we think taxes are going in the future? This chart looks like going back to 1933 to give you a little bit of a tax lesson here. We have, let me go back here. We have in the 1930s through the early 1960s, we have world wars going on. And so taxes got as high as over 90%. It only affected 15 families, but they were really, really high. That you could see the orange is the top federal bracket, the lowest is the blue. The blue tends to be a little bit more consistent. That first cliff dive after 1963, we have President Kennedy getting in, and he said at such high rates, why wouldn't people cheat? So he lowered them down to a generous 70%. And then we have that stair step down in the 1980s with President Reagan, who met with Milton Friedman from the University of Chicago, a Nobel Prize winning economist. And he said, let's get it from the corporations and not from the personal side. And so he cut their personal taxes way down. But he said, wait for it to show up on Wall Street in 6 to 8 years. So he did. Then we have Bush Jr. or Bush Sr. getting in. After that, read my lips, no new taxes was his famous quote. And taxes went up, and he served one term. And then we have a little bit of a jump in the early 90s with President Clinton. Then we have that little bit of a lowered stretch with Bush Jr. or HW or George W. Bush. We have the Bush tax cuts. Then they went back up during President Obama, and then our current tax cuts with President Trump. So just talking about budgeting, there's only two ways to balance any budget, whether it's the government or your personal pocketbook or your personal household. So with the government, they either stop spending which means that they don't expand programs. Now, no matter which side of the aisle you trend towards, they're just a different line item. There's always spending going on. Or you raise more revenue or make more money. For the government, it's taxation is where they're going to get it. For us personally, we either have to stop spending or make more money with income. So know that we're in a very low tax environment, but if you see down in the bottom, according to US debtclock.org that I pulled from yesterday, we have a giant debt as a nation, $27.2 trillion and growing. And so with taxes so low, it makes it difficult when one of the main sources for gathering revenue from the government is through personal income tax. It makes it a bit of a challenge to balance that budget. So just to have that in mind in how you decide to invest going forward. The next part is going to be expectations for growth rates of different types of investment instruments. We have small size stock companies that have averaged since 1926 about 12%. We have larger companies like your General Electrics and your Walmarts growing at about 10%. Then we get into bonds or debt instruments from the government, 5%, treasury bills, shorter duration loans from the government, 3%. But then that gray mountain, that dreaded gray mountain, one of the two reasons why we invest not in just our checking account or under our mattress is because of this thing called inflation, the rising costs of goods and services. Over the last 50 years, it's averaged 4%. Historically, it's averaged around 3%. We don't want to or have the ability to work at the level we are working at now forever. So we have to invest in these investments so that we can replace income with money working for us instead of us working for money, as well as keeping up with the rising costs of goods and services over time. Also, another thing is confidence with retirement. Confidence isn't that great. The Employee Benefit Research Institute does an annual survey, and a couple of highlights. The share of workers who feel very confident in their ability to live comfortably in retirement remains low at just 23%. 41% not confident about their ability to cover medical expenses, and nearly half, or 48%, do not feel confident about having enough money for long-term care and retirement. So people are concerned about necessarily, possibly running out of money. And so this isn't guaranteeing that you're going to have issues, but it highlights the importance of planning ahead and making sure that our high expectations about what our future looks like is matched with activities that help get us towards those goals and make them a reality. So to save for the future, whether it's short-term or long-term, it's a pretty simple math equation. The first is time multiplied by money plus a positive return equals your wealth, your retirement, education savings, a new house, paying for a car, whatnot. Any factor is larger than the others can be smaller. So if you have more time for you young adults getting started, time is in your favor. So you don't have to save as much money or get as steep of a positive return on your investment to reach your goal. However, if you wait, you drag your feet, you wait 5, 10, 15 years to get started, it's going to be a steeper climb because you'll have to put away more money or work longer or get a more aggressive rate of return in order to achieve that same goal. So any factor is larger, the others can be smaller. Any factor is smaller, the others can be larger or can need to be larger. So we're going to break down saving for the future. This is for retirement. This tool can be used absolutely for a short-term savings goal as well. So the first factor is I'm going to take just throw a number out there for you. The number is an annual income of $150,000. So what I'm assuming in this situation is a joint household. Maybe each spouse or partner is, pulling in $75,000 a year. and that's a dual income household. This number, if it's too steep for you, you can cut the number in half, or if it's too low, you can double it. The math still works. Next is desired retirement age. I'm going to take a survey and say the average age in this webinar is 30 years old, and we want to retire at the age of 62. The desired retirement age could be broken down into, hey, I want to retire yesterday. Some say early retirement, 55, 60. Others say 62 because Social Security, if it's viable, is going to be able to kick in at age 62. Some say, hey, I'll wait until full Social Security retirement at age 67. Others say, I don't ever plan on stopping working. Maybe they push it out to 72, which is the new CARES Act passing due to COVID-19. The legislation is that you don't have to take required minimum distributions until the age of 72. So we have 32 years to get you there. And desired retirement income. So as a percentage of current income, there's 3 schools of thought. First school of thought is half of our current take-home income. And that is going to consist of the minimalist mentality. So house is paid for, kids are gone. I'm not contributing to retirement anymore. Maybe the grandkids can live with us, but not our kids. And so it's a matter of, hey, I've just got a minimalist lifestyle. I don't plan on traveling. The next option is option B would be, what does the Department of Labor and Wall Street Journal Financial Planning Guide say? And they say roughly 70 to 85%. If you have a 30-year-old house that you're living in and it's paid for, what do you probably need? Remodeling, updates, upkeep, new roof. And then the other thing is, if you do have kids or other dependents, once they're out of the house, are they permanently out of the house, or do they come back? And so you have to consider expenses that leave and then they reappear in the future. The last school of thought is 90, 95, 105%. And that is, what is it you dream about doing in retirement? Does it cost money? Do you want it to be with just your spouse or partner, or do you want it to extended family and friends? And then how frequently do you want to travel, or what if you need to travel? As an example, I have family in Southern California that we're going to go visit, and I have to have a travel budget. So that's a reality that's going to be for the rest of my life if I stay in the Midwest. So then so in this case, let's use 75%. Next is we have to factor in what our growth rates are. So if we have a growth rate of, as an example, here's 7%. If we look at the Standard & Poor 500 index, the S&P 500, people say, what's the market doing? Well, that's a great market indicator for the top 500 stock companies in the United States. So some of them are global companies, but top 500 companies. And if you looked at, the last 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, we're looking at, 10 to 13%, 5 to 10 years. If you go back though, all the way to 2000, if you factor in those 2 large, including even this year, market adjustments, you're looking at closer to a 4.5% return on your money only. So it depends on what your experience is going forward. There's no guarantee for what's ahead for equities. Right. So that being said, if we took a little bit better than the 20-year average and said 7%, we'll use that as a growth rate here. And then once we hit our goal in retirement, we maybe don't need to take on as much risk. So let's throttle that back to 5%. So no, this is all hypothetical. And if this is something that you're interested in exploring on your own, I'd be glad to be able to walk you through it. But in this case, we have 75% desired income. One of the spouses, let's say, works for the state of California, has a pension at maybe 40% of their current income, depending on which pension option they select, if they have a survivor benefit or not. Let's just assume a 30% or $30,000 pension. The second spouse maybe is a professional on their own, doesn't have a pension. Social Security, a lot of people young don't plan on counting on Social Security. but let's just assume that there's maybe a discounted off of what you're putting away for Social Security of $1,000 a month for the household, which leaves us on our own efforts having to come up with $70,500 a year. So that would be our own efforts putting money away in the future. So now we got to figure out if we have a pile of money earning 5% in retirement and it equaled 70,500, how big of a pile of money does it need to be? Actually, it needs to be $1.4 million. At $1.4 million, I earn 5%. That equals 70,500. If I live on all that income and I guaranteed got a 5%, then my money would last forever. However, if let's say because healthcare creeps up in the future, let's say you have to pull out 6% one year. Well, that becomes a problem because then it starts to eat at next year's principal and interest, and you could eventually, if done over time, could run out of money. So if you account for maybe a smaller withdrawal rate and reinvest a couple percent of that 5 to hedge against raising costs or inflation, we'll give you another number to use. Oops.
And sorry, Chris, just due to time,
Yep.
I kind of just wanted to close it up by saying just the connection between having good credit and making sure that you are preparing for your future is that having good credit allows you to use money that you really don't have at this very moment. But
Yes.
you know, planning for your future allows you to have money when you are retired or later on in life, making sure that you are able to sustain yourself without having that extra income coming in. And I think that is very important to think about, because as we are still young, or I'm young, but as young professionals, we kind of forget about planning for our future. And myself, and some of us can probably contest that we are very worried about now and maybe forget about the future. So this is very important. This is key information for individuals who are maybe having a 401k with their job, or maybe having other retirement plans, maybe an IRA, something like that, making sure that they are understanding the key concepts to, allow them to plan for the future effectively. So,
let me segue briefly into, this is long-term saving, but it affects short-term savings as well. And let me get into here. Allocating for the future, not whether that's short or long-term. So budgeting for the down payment on the house, budgeting for borrowing, but budgeting for the future. How do we figure out what's appropriate for budgeting? So this chart shows income coming in and then different percentages of the outflow and what are some good parameters for you. Let me briefly go through just a quick excerpt from one of my colleagues, Wes Young, to help you understand the importance of not living beyond your means. So he says that many people spend an enormous amount of their lives trying to get rich, and very few people ever have taken the time to define what it actually means to be rich. And so let's talk about a definition. So most people define rich as getting to the place where you have more money than ideas. Being rich for most means arriving at the destination that you have out-earned our wants or problems. So this causes us to run harder and harder to pursue that goal. The problem with that definition is it's not only a bad definition, it's an impossible one. So especially for young professionals, it's not about how rich you are. It's about that definition is about being busy and tired, not getting rich. So there's going to always be a gap of where we want to be and where we are now. And we're going to all run out of time and money before we run out of ideas and opportunities we want to pursue. So to redefine rich is important, and it'll tie into this. Let's shift it from a noun to a verb. So rich is not a place we arrive at, but rather an activity that we engage in. So redefining rich is this. Being rich is the activity of creating more than you consume. So I'll repeat that. Being rich is the activity of creating more than you consume. So getting to this budget sheet is understanding having an idea and tracking what we consume and what we are creating. So I
Chris,
highly recommend, go ahead.
Is the audience able to receive this budget sheet after our conversation, after the
Absolutely.
webinar? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll make
So
sure that make sure that the audience gets that after this webinar is completed.
Perfect.
But I wanted to really give some time for Jeff to really talk about really how to rebound from having not the best credit. I know it takes time to improve your credit, but Jeff, can you please just speak about how a young professional can improve their credit and make sure that they are making sure that they are having the best practices for them to have the best credit later down the road?
Absolutely. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Chris. Awesome. And then definitely vouch for Chris. Known him for a long time. He's got great character, and then he handles all our finances too. So, so my goal today is to give you guys a lot of information in a short amount of time. I think I have about 10 or 15 minutes total. So if you guys can sit back, relax, and turn on your frontal lobes, hopefully I can take you on a credit journey to answer questions, to debunk some credit myths, and help you guys improve your credit score so you can get the financing you deserve and also save money along the way. So my wife, Natalie, and I started our company about 12 years ago. This is a picture of our family. So we actually been married 16 years now. So met about 19 years ago on a cruise ship. That's a whole nother story I don't have time for. Blue Water Credit Repair. We're located out of Roseville, but we do work with people nationwide. And I say this humbly, we're the highest rated credit repair company in the United States through Yelp, Google, and Facebook reviews. So grateful for that. We don't walk on water, but we do abide by the golden rule, which is treat people how we like to be treated. So sharing content is probably one of the #1 ways that we help people. We teach people about credit so that you guys can get the financing that you want. Make sure that your credit score is as high as possible so you can get approved and save some money. So over the past 12 years, we worked with over 10,000 clients. So I've seen literally thousands of credit reports. I've seen everything from someone reported as being dead with credit bureaus to identity theft and lots of mistakes on credit reports. So now I'd like to set the stage on kind of giving you guys some foundational information on credit. What is a credit score? Most credit scores range from 300 to 850. And Logan, I think you mentioned bad credit's considered, like below 560. And then you can start to get financing if you get your score to like 580, but you're going to tend to pay much higher interest rate. Lenders use what's called risk-based pricing. So every 20 points usually gets you a better interest rate. So if you want the best rates or the advertised rates, you probably need your score to be above 760. That's kind of like the promised land of credit scores. Now, your credit score determines the level of risk the lender has with loaning you money. And so if you see this chart, like if the 680 credit score, the banks factor in that 1 out of 20 loans will default or go delinquent with people with a 680 credit score. And then you see how as the score starts to drop, the risk for the bank increases. I heard someone earlier speak about minimum credit score for 620 for some home loans. So with a 620 credit score, you may be approved, but the bank is factoring in that 1 out of 4 loans will likely default at that rate. So that's why the higher your score, the easier it is to get a loan approval, and your interest rate is going to be much lower. Now, one thing that we see on a daily basis when we talk to our clients is the credit scores that people look at online are different from the credit scores lenders use. Now, the reason being is sites like Credit Karma, which I personally have, if you have credit monitoring, they're going to be looking at what are called educational credit scores. So an educational credit score is not the same credit score that banks use when you go to apply for a loan, whether it's a home loan, a car loan, a credit card, or school loan. They're going to use a different recipe than like Credit Karma will or another site. So if you want to go to the website where you can get an accurate credit score, this is the only website you can get all of your credit scores that the banks see. It's called myfico.com. It does cost money. It's $29.95 to sign up for the monitoring, or $60 one-time pull. It is a soft inquiry, so it doesn't show up or hurt your credit. Now, but myfico.com is the only website to get accurate credit scores. So any other website you're looking at for credit scores, unfortunately, are not going to give you the same numbers. I've seen Credit Karma score be over 100 points off. So if you guys are relying on Credit Karma, unfortunately, it could be way off. Now, FICO, not to give you too much information, but FICO has multiple versions of their score too. So if you went to apply for a car loan, the car industry does use a FICO credit score, but some of their credit scores go up to 990. If you apply for a home loan, their credit scores only go up to 850, the FICO scores. So even though you're looking at a FICO score, the FICO scores do vary. So between mortgage, the car industry, credit card industry, and then there's some newly released versions that no one's using yet. Now, when FICO generates the score, they're looking at your credit report. And so they're looking at trade lines. A trade line is like a car loan, a school loan, a credit card, a mortgage. Those are all classified as trade lines. They also look at how often you've applied for new credit. So each time you apply for credit, it's going to show up as a hard inquiry, and it does lower your score for 12 months. They're looking at collections. If you have collections on your credit score will be damaged for 7 years. And then they're looking at public records. A public record would be like a bankruptcy. Things that are not considered are income, age, address, employment, gender, and whether you're Republican or Democrat. Sorry, I had to throw that out there. That's not considered in your score.
Jeff, we did have one question in the chat, which I think really applies to that. Does
Sure.
the type of income affect your credit score? So someone asked if I have things like child support as a main part of my income, does that affect my credit score?
Nope, there's no income variation at all that impacts credit score. There's no income on your credit report. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Thanks.
And I'm trying to fly through all this and be sensitive to your guys' lunch hour. So if you do have questions, you can hit the chat or you can email me directly. I'll have my contact information at the end. So the general formula for how FICO generates their score, there's 5 areas they look at. 35% of your score has to do with payment history. So do you have late payments, collections, anything negative? FICO looks at how recent the delinquency. The more recent the delinquency, the more it hurts your score. And then earlier, someone was speaking about your debt ratio. FICO looks at your credit card limit versus the balance. That's called your debt ratio. To have the best credit score, you want to use 10% or less of your limit. Now, age is a big factor too. It's about 15% of your score. So FICO looks at your newest account open. They do not like to see account with a less than a 2-year payment history. They also look at an average age of all your accounts, and they look at your oldest account open. 10% is having a mixture of credit. They like to see 1 to 5 credit cards, a car loan or school loan, and a mortgage. And then the last 10% are how many times have you applied for a new loan in the last 12 months. Now, we are eligible to get a free credit report per year. The website is annualcreditreport.com. Now, due to COVID, we have access to this report once per week now. Now, this website is free, but it does not give you accurate credit scores. It's just the credit reports. Recipe for the highest credit score. Try to keep your credit card balances below 10% of the credit card limit. Only apply for credit when absolutely necessary, because like I said a moment ago, if you have a new account with less than a 2-year payment history, your credit score is penalized until you have a longer payment history on that. And then FICO likes to see 3 to 6 accounts open, paid as agreed. So keep your balances low, only open accounts when absolutely necessary, and try to have 3 to 6 accounts open, paid as agreed. Now, because of the CARES Act, there have been changes to the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Those are the laws that govern credit reports and creditors reporting. And so if anybody's been impacted financially due to COVID, and you have any federal loans like federal school loans or federal home loans, you can contact your creditor and you can work out some sort of payment arrangement or accommodation. It could be forbearance, loan modification, potential forgiveness. But it's up to us to individually contact our creditors to set up these accommodations. Now, some tips on how to boost the score. Logan had talked about earlier about how you want to jump your score maybe from like a 680 to a 700. or maybe a 700 to a 720. These are some practical ways you could do that. Is you get all of your credit card balances to 1 to 10% of the limit. If you have multiple credit cards that are maxed out, we recommend paying off the smallest credit cards first. That will yield the highest credit score improvement. Now, settling a collection for deletion will improve your score. Paying a collection does not improve your score. So a paid collection, if it's on your credit report, hurts your score the same. But you can negotiate collections to be removed from your credit. So that's something that we can assist with as well. You can add to your spouse's credit card as an authorized user. And when you add to your spouse's credit card, you inherit that credit history. So if it has a long payment history and a low balance, that's going to show up on your credit and give your score a nice boost. And the flip is also true. If you have a credit card that's maxed out or there's late payments on there and you're on as an authorized user, you can remove yourself and that will boost your score. Open up a secured credit card. You can go to our website, which is bluewatercredit.com. We offer our own secured card, or go into your local bank and see if they offer a secured credit card. And then Blue Water Credit, we always offer a risk-free consultation to review your credit and give advice. So we encourage you 3 to 6 months before you try to buy a home or a car, is just consult us for free advice, and we'll tell you exactly what you need to do to boost your score. Now, some of the benefits of having a good score: low interest rates, you get a better chance for loan approval. You have more negotiating power if you're trying to rent a home or apartment because you are competing with other people. You get approved for higher limits. You have peace of mind when you apply for loans. And I found the statistic earlier from the National Association of Realtors. It said people that own a home on average have a 41-time higher net worth than renters. So that is a crazy number. How to read your credit report. Basically, you have a lot of data on your report: personal information, employment history, consumer statements, your account information. This is an example of what one would look like. Anytime we deal with identity theft, we do like to review personal information because a lot of times if you have your identity stolen, there'll be a new address or name on your credit report. Experian Boost has been very popular lately. That is a way to improve your Experian credit score. The downside is you have to give Experian access to your bank account information. So if Experian ever gets hacked like Equifax did a couple years ago, there's a potential your bank account information could be exposed. As we know, a lot of things are on the rise right now, and unfortunately identity theft is one of those. There's been multiple data breaches this year: Twitter, Zoom, Marriott. And so if you are a victim of identity theft, you want to get a copy of your credit report, place a fraud alert or security freeze on your credit, and then consult us. We've been 100% successful in fixing identity theft with credit reports over the last 12 years. So we're always here to help, and I know I jammed through this content. If you have questions, feel free to call our office, 916-315-9190. You can go to our website at bluewatercredit.com. We have hundreds of blog articles. We've written 4 ebooks that you can download for absolutely free. And all this content that I have in this seminar, well, you'll actually be able to find on our website as well. So other than that, were there any other questions in the chat?
We'll give a couple minutes for some questions to filter in, but I have one, which
Sure.
is, you talk about payment history being a huge part of someone's credit score, and say someone has been able to pay down all their debt and now currently has 0 balances on their credit card. Does that hurt a credit score? Should we be working on continually using those cards in small amounts and paying them off monthly? How does having a 0 balance on a card affect that?
Sure. So having a 0 balance is not quite as good as a small balance. So if your credit score is below 760 and you're trying to apply for a loan soon, charging a small balance, like $20 or $10 or any small balance will give you a higher credit score than a 0 balance. So that's a great question. And one other thing I can clarify too, even if you pay your credit card in full every month, the credit report is not going to show 0. Your credit report's going to show whatever your balance was on your statement. So if you have a $1,000 credit card and you charge $500 on it and you pay it off every month, the credit report's going to show $500 and your score is going to be about 20 to 25 points lower than if you had a small balance on there. So that's a great question. Thanks for asking.
I think before we open it up to questions, I think with the holidays coming around, one way I found that I could leverage my credit was those big purchases I had for presents. I would charge it on my card, and the money I already had, I was on my bank account, I would just pay my credit card that amount. Do you find that's a good or effective method in terms of increasing your credit score in a way?
Sure. So there's a couple issues, and for lack of time, I didn't go into, but during the holidays, identity theft and credit card fraud tends to go up. And so identity theft is much easier to fix on a credit card than it is a debit card. So I personally always recommend charging things on a credit card. And then as you're able to pay those down, then your score will go up. Now, Logan, if you're not trying to get a loan in the next 30 to 60 days, you having high balances over the holidays isn't going to really matter, because your credit score is only impacted for the month that your balances are high. So as long as you don't get into financial trouble where you can't pay your credit cards off after the holidays, your credit score will rebound the following month. So January, February, when you pay your balances down, your score is going to go right back up where it was. So, but if you want to pay your card before the closing statement, then when the information gets sent to the credit bureau, your score will always be as high as possible.
All right, thank you for that advice.
You bet.
Caitlin, were there any questions in the chat by any chance?
No more, and I do want to just recognize we're a couple minutes over time. I know we had so much incredible info jam-packed into this session, and so I wanted to let everybody know that we will have this recording available if anyone had to head off or wants to revisit any of this information or revisit some of our slides or contact any of our panelists. That information will absolutely be available. And so with respect to everyone's time, I do want to pause here and say thank you so much to each of our panelists once again, Jeff, Chris, Edward, for all of the really valuable information you bring. I think the financial world can be really wild for some young professionals to try to navigate as we're working through first-time employment and new loans and all of that, trying to prepare for, especially for buying a home, which we at Habitat really want to empower folks to be able to do. So thank you again so much for all of your time and for all of your information. We will share some contact information in case any of our folks have any questions. But with that, we'll say thank you so much to everyone for attending and have a great rest of your lunch hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.